So James Gunn thinks Batman is boring. So I would say fundamentally doesn't understand Batman, but we'll get to that in a minute. He also thinks he has a plan to fix Batman in the DCU. Worth taking a look at, because of course this is the man who is the architect of the DC universe right now. Top marks. Do you think Batman is boring? Do you think he's a character that can run out of steam real fast? Do you think he's a character that you can't really go very far with him? Yes or no? Let me know down below. It's not like, there are decades upon decades of comic runs of Batman. It's not like Batman has some of the most worldwide recognizable villains. Rogues Gallery. Nope, he's boring. Anyway, amazing. Some of these comments are just baffling to me anyway. And like I said, worthwhile taking a look at. I wanted to talk about it. So there was a recent interview with Rolling Stone, and Gunn just openly suggested that Batman has effectively run out of storytelling value. Right. Or the writers are shit. Maybe there's that. Calling the character boring due to decades of exposure across comics, television, and film. So, right. Okay. So you think... Basically, James Gunn thinks Batman is inherently boring now because we've been oversaturated. That, in and unto itself, is on face value, a fair point. Oversaturation of things can swamp the market and make people desensitized to it. A bit boring. Unexciting. I actually don't think that's the case with Batman, though. I think Batman inherently can always be interesting, because in a world of superheroes, which he is, he resides within a world of superheroes, he is effectively just a man. And that can be incredibly interesting. I think it's unfortunately that people working in the industry now, be it movies, video games, comics, novels, series, whatever, are shit, and they don't know what they're talking about. In fact, they are creatively bankrupt and just generally terrible. So Gunn insists that he apparently has a plan for the Dark Knight within the DCU. His comments are, of course, already fueling concern, because people are like, what? You're supposed to be making a Batman movie. What? So that's a bit bizarre. You'd think that if you've got a Batman on the horizon, you'd think that you would, I don't know, not denigrate the character so much. Perhaps. Obviously. And obviously people are now concerned that, a serious Batman with James Gunn involved probably isn't going to be serious anymore. So Gunn's remarks go further than vague reassurances. He explicitly frames Batman as a creative problem that needs justification simply to exist, which is just one of the most bizarre comments or framings ever, really. So he was asked by Rolling Stone what needs to be figured out to make Batman work in the DCU. Gunn said, Batman has to have a reason for existing, right? So Batman can't just be, we're making a Batman movie because Batman's the biggest character in all of Warner Brothers, which he is, but because there's a need for him in the DCU and a need that he's not exactly the same as Matt's Batman. What? I mean, what? So you've got to manufacture a reason for the character to exist in the DCU rather than... That doesn't make any sense. He is part of the DCU, whether you like it or not. I mean, he's quintessential DC, as is Superman. But you're very quick to justify Superman's existence. Super odd comments, I think. And he says, but yet he's not a campy Batman. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in a funny, campy Batman, really. So we're dealing with that. I think I have a way in, by the way. I think I really know what it's... I just am dealing with the writer to make sure that we can make it a reality. What is this nonsense? This is absolute drivel. It is. That's narrative drivel. You know, Gunn isn't talking about expanding Batman's mythology, literally just saying he needs, even to create a movie, we need to write a backstory for him to exist in the universe. Right, okay. So strange. So strange. And, you know, Gunn starts talking about Wonder Woman and says, Wonder Woman, I think, is actually easier for me because there haven't been so many infinite portrayals of Wonder Woman. Definitely not in movies, but really anywhere that there have been of Batman. So is he saying that Batman needs to, like, justify its existence because they don't want to make it like the other versions? If so, that's really dumb. Every single Batman story has been told. No, it hasn't. It hasn't at all. Way to just admit creative bankruptcy. It seems like half the comics that have come out of DC over the past 30 years have Batman in them. He's the most famous superhero in the world and the most popular superhero in the world. And people love him because he's interesting. So why did you call him boring? But also having so much of him out there can also make him boring. Brilliant. So how do you create that property that's fun to watch? What? I don't want Batman. I don't want Batman that's fun to watch. I want a Batman that's interesting and engaging to watch. Not every movie has to be fun. Right? Movies can just be engaging, thrilling, interesting, nerve-wracking. It can be a wild ride. But he's like, well, how do you turn that property to make it fun to watch? It's like, well, I'd rather not, but okay. So strange. Super weird commentary. I mean, he's not boring as a character. And I don't think, actually, the saturation of the character makes him boring either. Because I think Batman has such a strong fan base that people are sort of chomping at the bit to see, you know, a quintessential version of him on screen. Right? I think. People want to see Batman. Now, some people will agree or disagree with some of the last few iterations. I don't think he's boring, though. It's a weird comment to make. And again, it doesn't exactly spell brilliant future for the DCU, does it? Let's be honest. So I don't think James Gunn understands Batman. Not going to lie. I think that's patently obvious from comments like this. Or, actually, realistically, understand, like, to say that all the stories have ever been done, that's bollocks. That's palpable bollocks. Obviously bollocks. Clearly, there's still more stories to tell. Obviously nonsense. I think we have a litany of creatively bankrupt losers that don't know what they're doing. I think that's the case. But palpable bollocks to say he's boring and all the stories have been told. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. Bye now.